Thank you all so much for being here. And thank you all for being here between shows, you guys. Let's give them an extra round of applause for that. I was just asking Tom backstage, seeing that trailer again, because I knew that that was not a line from the play. And I said, where is that from? Who wrote that? And you said?
Harold Pinter. Not surprisingly. So that, yes, the voiceover in the trailer is an extract from his Nobel lecture. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2005. And it's a really remarkable piece of writing where I became aware of it in 2007 during the holiday period. I remember seeing it online. And he talks about the investigation of reality through art and the difference between truth as a dramatist and truth as a citizen. And when he turns to truth as a citizen, he's quite unsparing about the political reality of that moment. But really, if for anyone involved in the theatre, for anyone involved in creating fiction, the first part of it is his sort of explanation of, I think, his own modus operandi as a playwright. The whole thing is about trying to find the truth of human behavior, the truth of being alive, that there is no one truth, there are many truths, and they confront each other and tease each other and seduce each other and recoil from each other. There's an amazing line. He says, sometimes you feel you have the truth of a moment in your hand and it slips through your fingers and is lost. There is no one truth to be found in dramatic art, and that's what we're all trying to do.
I was going to say, we're going to talk all about the many truths today. Show of hands, how many of you have seen this production of Betrayal?
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I love to see that. I love to see that. Well, for those of you who haven't, a brief plot synopsis. So Tom plays Robert, who is married to Emma, played by Zawe, who is having an affair with Jerry, played by Charlie. I feel like I'm on like the dating game. And Jerry was the best man at Robert and Emma's wedding, and the two of them work together. Robert's a publisher, Jerry's a literary agent, so it's deliciously rich. And although when Pinter was on this stage 55 years ago, he said he doesn't consider meaning outside the text of his work, we are going to defy him and dissect it all today. So I know that this production began when the two of you, Zawe and Tom, did the Tortelli Scene at a gala for Pinter at the Pinter, which was for director Jamie Lloyd's theater company. Can you guys set the scene for me a little bit about the gala leading up to it, how much rehearsal time there may or may not have been for this scene?
But not much.
No.
It was a one-night, one-off on his birthday, what would have been his 88th birthday.
10 years after
10 years after
he died.
And Jamie Lloyd, our director, had been directing a season of Pinter, short Pinter plays, less well-known Pinter plays, at the Harold Pinter Theatre in London. Hence Pinter at the Pinter. And it was a celebration of his work, of some of his, what are considered his masterpieces, and his poems and his short plays. And Jamie Lloyd invited a whole company of actors who'd had some relationship to Pinter back for one night to do little bits. Simon Russell Beale did something from The Hot House. Kristen Scott Thomas came back and did a bit from, was it Old Times?
No, I think it was something else.
Something else. But,
And it was mostly people who were doing a show during that season.
Yes, there was a bit of the dumb waiter, or it was about to be the dumb waiter.
It was nice because people had sort of swapped roles. You know, like Kristen had done Old Times at the Harold Pinter before, but was coming back to do something else, and then someone else did a scene from Old Times. So it was almost like an art gallery of Pinter. You know, there was sort of pieces in dialogue with each other and actors in dialogue with each other in that way, and it was.
And so Jamie asked the two of you to do Betrayal.
Yeah.
Yes. in front of a group of actors who've done Betrayal.
Which is when the curation of it gets a bit
so
scary.
Jeremy Irons was also there, who'd played Jerry, and he was doing a bit from No Man's Land. And Sam West had played Robert at the Donmar Warehouse in London.
No pressure.
Yeah, but it was a very, very collegiate, very joyful evening. And Zawe and I were asked to do this scene from Betrayal, which really is a masterpiece, I think, in its own right, the scene itself. It's just an extraordinary piece of writing. And we went through it once.
Had about 15 minutes rehearsal.
Yeah, we
and
did one
everyone
read-through.
did.
Had you two known each other before?
We did. We'd actually a little sort of bumped into each other in London. We'd never properly worked together. But that was...
So 15 minutes, you do the scene, and then what was it that happened during that scene that you were like, maybe this is something we should examine more permanently, and the whole
What's really interesting is I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but that, Pinter is a great comedic writer. And on that evening, there were many very funny pieces. And I remember thinking, this one's going to be a bit of a downer. It's when Robert finds out that Emma has been having an affair. I thought, well, never mind. It's not going to be, there are going to be no laughs here, but let's just play it straight. And there was a really extraordinary silence. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It's a kind of a quality of listening that's quite unusual.
It was great to be doing that scene in the setup of the gala, because it was literally actors and microphones. There were no extras. The stage was completely bare. Yeah. And so it really was, as Tom said, it was the words and the silences and the pauses and the atmosphere. And for whatever reason, that scene really lent itself to the sparseness of it. And then, fast forward however long, we're in a production that has remained really true to that initial moment. And so I think that was something that really kind of just fit with the piece. But there was also this very incredible atmosphere, because we were in the middle of a season that Jamie was doing of Pinter's one-act plays. And so there were actors there who were doing scenes from those one-act plays. And it suddenly felt as though towards the end of the season, maybe there should be a presentation of something one of his long-form pieces. And it just seemed to fit as Pinter 8. There'd been 7 Pinters, and there was this elusive 8th
I love that
one.
idea about the quality of listening, because I think that that's something that struck me seeing it for the first time, that I thought, we don't see things like this slow down anymore.
Yeah.
We don't listen like this very often, even in the theater. I think that things are sped up, and you have Around the Corner, To Kill a Mockingbird, where Aaron Sorkin is that dialogue is very snappy and punchy, and this is such a wonderful contrast within the season. Okay, so you decide to do Betrayal, and you need a Jerry.
We didn't decide.
We didn't decide.
It is decided.
Yeah. I should sort of say the greatest compliment was that Antonia Fraser, Lady Antonia Fraser, Harold Pinter's widow, was there that night. It was very much a celebration for her, and she said to us afterwards, that perhaps you both like to do the whole thing. And people like Sam West and Jeremy Irons were really generous as well. And then Jamie said, let's do the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we decided to do the whole thing. And then, of course, what we needed was Charlie Cox.
Exactly. Charlie, I know that you had worked with Jamie before on a different Pinter play. What is it about the way that Jamie directs that you said, oh yeah, I want to jump on this if I can?
Well, I just had a wonderful experience with him almost 11 years ago, which was both of our West End debuts, mine and Jamie's. And I remember reading the play that he'd sent me, which was The Lover in the Collection, but I was mainly going to be in the collection. And I read it, and I hadn't read it before, and I hadn't read a huge amount of Pinter. And I'd seen at school, I'd seen The Birthday Party, but I hadn't, that was really my own experience. But I read it and kind of didn't really get it. I wasn't particularly moved by it. And I met with Jamie anyway, and he convinced me that there was much more there than I was seeing. And then in the rehearsal period, I discovered that he was absolutely right, and I was absolutely thrilled with how much we discovered and how much is not said, and how many different choices can be made in terms of the subtext. And it felt like a really freeing experience for an actor. And so I've always remembered that, and I've always hoped that we would get the chance to work together again. So when I was presented with the opportunity of not only working with him again, but also on another Harold Pinter play, and arguably his masterpiece, I was over the moon.
Did you read together before it was officially done? Because we kind of had this test run with the two of you doing that Tortelli scene at the gala, or was it Jamie just knew, like, I know who our third, the third leg of this stool is?
My experience was I got in a cab to go to the airport, and I got a call in the taxi saying, would you like to do this play with Tom and Zawe and Jamie Lloyd directing? And I said, yes, I'm very interested. Can you send me, because I was going to the airport, can you send me the script? And then I got off the phone, I was too impatient, I couldn't wait, so I text Jamie, because I still had his number. So I texted him, and then he sent me the script, and then I read it in the cab, and then I called him back and said, I'm in, I'll do it, before I got on the plane.
I love that.
So I played hard to get,
Oh, unenthusiastic Charlie Cox. Oh, God.
But the even we see this on just like your Instagram stories, the chemistry between you guys is very real. You all seem to really enjoy each other. Like, what was that like in the early days when before you knew that it would be Charlie, what did you need to complete the trio?
Well, Charlie was just at the top of the list. It's quite simple. And
if you weren't, they're gonna say you were.
No, I know, yeah. He really was, and Jamie will back me up. I remember we talked about it, and actually the first time Jamie called to check Charlie's availability, he wasn't available, and so we were like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And tried to think of other people who weren't as they just weren't the right fit, and sometimes you have to kind of hold your hands up and say, well, everything happens at the right time and for the right reasons, and it has been very, very special, this experience. We've done this play for the entire year, and we started rehearsing on the 1st or 2nd of February, and here we are at the end of November. And I remember we all remember those days in February rehearsing it, and it was very free, and we were all ready to go. We'd all learned it, and we felt we had time in our rehearsal period to really explore the complexity of the dynamic between these three characters, and that actually the pain, their capacity to cause each other pain, stems from their enormous love for each other. These are three people who love each other very much, and that's why they can hurt each other so much.
It feels like with three other actors with, completely different chemistry, this would be a completely different production. And one thing I found so rewarding right from the beginning of rehearsing was it was clear that you could use so much of yourself, and we could use so much of what was naturally happening between the three of us to really mine the text, because what Harold asks you to do with his work, I think, is to just commune with it. He's asking you to be with him in his truth, non-truth, space, and be extremely open. If you try and overwrite his words and his work with your own ego or your own need to perform in a certain way or to bend the character to your own ends, he will from beyond the grave kind of give you a slap.
But at the same time, like Charlie was saying, there's so many pauses and so many things that you all have to imbue into these characters, because I guess I'm just wondering, like, where is the balance between Pinter being so clear about who they are and you all figuring out who your version is because there are things to mine? Do you know who your character is from the day you start, or has it?
Tom has a really good quote, and of Harold's, I don't remember exactly what it is, but it feels to me that he's not. I don't know that I always feel like he's clear about who these people are, but he's clear about what they say and what they do.
Yeah.
And there is a bit of a difference there, because it means that he leaves the characters open to a little bit of interpretation. I think the thing that Jamie did so wonderfully is, if you're going to put a play up, you've obviously got to, in order to cast it, you do have to have a sense of what you understand this play to be and who these people are. What Jamie does so wonderfully is he has that, he then casts it, and then he throws it all out and says, now I've got these three, or these, how many people, I have to now let them see what they bring to the room.
Yeah.
And let it grow from there.
Because you can't with this play go, oh, this is a play about three very, angry people, or this is a play about three very upset people. I think the natural tendency and the natural chemistry between us from the get-go was so tender and so trusting that I think what this production has grown into is a play about real betrayal and real tenderness and real loss of innocence, I think, in lots of ways. And I get such a thrill when I still see moments that I know that we created all the way back in February, that in that moment felt like, oh, maybe that'll stay, maybe that'll go. Is that
Like
something
what?
that I
What's
just
something
did that was quite
what's something
weird?
that happened in February that ended up staying that
Do you know, there's
delights you?
we created all of the moments where one of us isn't speaking on stage. So in our production, each character remains on stage the entire time, which is the first time that's been done with this play. So there would be moments in rehearsal where two people would kind of be going at it in their scene, and you'd think, right, I've got completely bare stage here. What am I going to do in the background? Shall I sit down? Shall I lean against something? No, I should stand up. So there's moments, for example, where, there's a moment where I trail my hand across the back of the stage.
Love that.
And it was completely random at the time, and it all came from just hearing the rhythm that was happening between these two in that particular scene. But suddenly it became this moment where it's, someone leaving a home, or, tracing their fingers across the wallpaper of a house that they shared with someone, or the flat that they shared with someone. And those moments are so satisfying because they were completely pure and innocent. There's loads that I can't think of it.
Aggressively overfilling Charlie's wine glass.
That's always been there. It's been there from the beginning.
Have that much.
I mean, I love that too, though, because
that happened in rehearsals. That happened in London, I think.
That happened in rehearsal.
I feel like it happened in performance, but early on in performance. Did it not?
I think it happened in rehearsal.
I
do
find it
remember
so funny because
because
it's
we
like
had to talk
he
about-
doesn't just want. So now at this point, he knows.
He knows, yeah.
The affair is happening, and it's not just that he wants to get drunk; it's that he wants Jerry to get drunk as well.
But it's also he makes
Like
it
the
so
challenge.
inconvenient for Jerry. So I'm going to fill your glass up, and you're going to have trouble drinking it, and I'm going to enjoy watching that. Which is such a small element of control in his contrasted with his internal chaos. But
that also, what I will say is that also came out of the natural dynamic that was happening between the two of you. I mean,
Right,
do we need
Charlie-
to talk about squash
Charlie.
quickly, or
we can talk about squash.
the lines
gonna play
about
squash?
that have deepened over
I
time?
mean, you guys did play squash eventually.
We do play squash.
We've developed
We now do play squash.
a squash routine.
You didn't play squash before this play. Now you do.
We both played as
Rewriting history.
younger men. I played a bit as a teenager. I think you had too.
A little bit,
once or twice. And then it was really, this was really interesting, because there are so many references to squash, and Robert usually brings them up. And if you, in the timeline, it's very clear that the moment the affair between Jerry and Emma began was the moment Jerry and Robert stopped playing squash. As if somehow there's some sort of transference of intimacy from the friendship to the affair, and that squash is the intimate thing they did as friends. And we had this idea, let's go and play squash and see what it's like, see if we get something from it. And actually, we played very early in the morning one Friday, and then came into rehearsal, and the scenes were completely different. The scenes felt like squash rallies. Because in a squash court, it's a concrete box,
right?
And the rubber ball is moving around very fast, and it is quite violent, and you can collide and run into each other. And it's very loud, and there's this great echo. And I think Pinter's so clever, and he probably disapproved of me going into sort of trying to unpick his play in this way. But some of the conversations between Robert and Jerry do feel like a squash rally. I thought you knew what? That I knew, that I'd known for years. I thought you knew that. You thought I knew. Well, she said you didn't, but I didn't believe that. Anyway, I think I thought you knew. Point. You know,
no, and it just, so the energy just totally changes when you think about it in that way.
Completely, that day, the scene was completely different.
I would imagine that you would also feel that, like, perhaps even more so than they would, because as the observer of that scene, as the listener, you're really tracking, you know, what their energy is.
Absolutely, 100%. The competition between the two of them, I think that was the day I realized the competition between the two of these men is so important to present as deeply as possible, because actually that's where I think the three of them become entangled. I could choose anyone to have an affair with, and I choose my husband's best friend. And
you certainly feel highly of yourself, don't you?
I was going to say.
I mean, I could have had anyone. I don't mean it like.
About the play,
I don't mean it like that. But I mean, you know, there's something, as Tom alluded to just then. There's something between the two of them that it's kind of attractive to get in between to my character, you know, on a subconscious level. You know, they are so intimate and so intertwined that, you know, I feel like that's definitely part of where the impetus to start this whole betrayal
But I think that's so interesting about the transference of intimacy, because so much of it, I'm like, what is the squash thing? Is it just that he wants to challenge him? Is it about power? Is it about, you know, getting on his schedule? Like, what is the preoccupation?
I think it's all those
all
things.
of it.
Yeah, I think it's a play about power, as much as power and knowledge, and three people trying in the contest for power or the acquisition of it. The flawed logic is that one can control their internal vulnerability. And I think I think he was fascinated. There's an amazing sequence of dialogue between Robert and Jerry about the difference between boy babies and girl babies.
Yes.
Boy babies cry more than girl babies, do they? I think Pinter, throughout his plays, as Jamie was very generous, because he directed so much of it, there is a theme running through Harold Pinter's plays about the vulnerability of men, and that actually women will prevail where men must and always will invariably fail, and that perhaps Emma is stronger than Robert and Jerry in some way, that she's able to confront her actions in a way that Robert and Jerry aren't really. So going back to the squash, it just becomes another frame in which to explore the complexity of what's happening in the space between these three people, and how honestly, and how, you know, we have as human beings, we have this infinite capacity for love, and love can be expressed in many different ways, and and there are many betrayals, as you've said, the betrayal of the husband by the wife or the friend by the friend, but also this betrayal between the two of us and this betrayal here, because Jerry didn't, when Emma asks, have you ever thought of changing your life? Jerry says it's impossible. So Jerry starts something which he then isn't willing to follow through on, and that's a betrayal of Emma. And I think there's so much loss in the play, and the loss of the friendship is very profound.
Absolutely. And it's a loss, it's so many different intimacies and losses too, because it's a friendship, but it's also a partnership in working. And when she's, you know, when Emma's reading a book that Jerry really likes and you thought was
awful,
not so good, you know, that's a betrayal in terms of intellectual sharing and taste and all those things. I want to go back to boy babies and girl babies, because you brought that up when we first met before I even saw the play, before you started previews.
I remember.
And it made me listen to that scene and that line differently. And I noticed that you come back to it. Is that the line that for you will always ground you, will always release you? And do you too have lines like that in the play? That's the one that when you're, I don't know, having a hard day, or when you're not sure how you're going to connect, you come back to always? Is that what that line is?
It's one of them.
That scene?
That's one of them. I think it's a clue from Pinter for the actor about his internal world, about Robert's internal world, that there is a very vulnerable boy baby behind that very bottled up, controlled exterior. And I hope that's somehow transmitted. And the other one when I was learning it before we started rehearsing is in the restaurant scene at the end, when Robert says to Jerry, when I walked about Tortelli in the early morning alone, I was happy. I wanted to stay there forever. And I think it's the most dishonest he gets. And I think what he's confessing is his eternal loneliness, and that being on Tortelli alone in the early morning is the most lonely he has ever felt, and perhaps he will always feel alone. And I think this plays as much about isolation as it is about betrayal, and the desolate quality of loneliness.
Or that perhaps the result of betrayal is loneliness.
I think
that feeling.
the many betrayals render Robert, Emma, and Jerry more alone than they were before.
What about you, Zawe?
Well, I said one to you when we had that lovely interview, which is a line that happens at the end of the play, which is also the beginning of the play, because the play is told backwards. Seeing as you've all seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Emma says to Jerry, when he says, in a moment of seduction, the moment where he's trying to, sort of confess his feelings for her, he says, "Oh, I saw you glide by in white," talking about my wedding. And I say, "I wasn't in white." And I just think that's such a telling thing. If you're a woman, certainly at the time when Harold was writing the play, which is the late 70s, if you're a woman who decided not to wear white to her first wedding, that's kind of a statement. That says, I'm potentially not someone who's wanting to conform. I'm potentially someone who is quite open with my, sexual appetite. I'm not, why would I wear white? I'm not a virgin.
But also someone who, whether she's not willing to play pretend.
It's
she
not
is
willing
who
to
she
play
is.
pretend. I think that's a real a symbol of strength that's written in there by Harold, and something that I can imagine if he saw a woman at a wedding not wearing white, he would read that symbolism so strongly, and the fact that he's put it in the play, I can feel that there's a real connection there. But I think more and more, scene 1 in the play, the end of the play, has started to feel more and more deeply connected for me, because there's this whole kind of, passage that Emma talks about where she's describing going to the flat that she used to have the affair with Jerry in. And she's
Years later, after it's
years
over.
later, after it's over. And she's describing driving past in what is probably her family car, driving past this address where this, very, very long affair happened. And she talks about getting out of the car and looking at the bells, the little names on the bells. And the play shifts all the time. We've done over 200 performances now, and so there are different lines that ring out on different weeks. There are different emotions, and there are different frames that are just happening constantly at the moment, especially as we approach the end. But that is just starting to really settle in for me. 200 plus performances later, a woman who goes back to the place that she shared this moment with this man, this difficult moment, and she just wants to be with it. And nostalgia is a huge part.
I was going to say, be with that memory.
Be with the memory. This is one of Pinter's memory plays, and there's just something so deeply sad about that level of nostalgia that he's exploring through her. And so that's something that I'm sort of sitting with a lot at the moment.
What about you, Charlie?
I remember early on in rehearsals, feeling like something that was, for me, felt was very important for Jerry was that his love for Emma was matched by his love for Robert, meaning that I felt reading it, the more I read it, and certainly as we were rehearsing it and as we were discovering what the energy, the spirit of the play that we were going to perform was going to be, it felt to me like it's really important that Jerry really does love Robert as well as love. That's his great dilemma. He loves his best friend, but he also loves his best friend's wife. And there's a line in scene 2.
I was going to say,
where he says, we used to like each other, which is, to answer your question, is always very grounding. But also what I hear often when I say that line is, not only did we used to like each other, but we also used to like ourselves. And I don't think Jerry likes himself very much anymore. And I don't think he'll ever like himself in the same way. And that I find that tremendously sad, that realization. That, like Zawe said, like it's another form of loss of innocence.
Yeah, when you're sort of looking back at the person who you were,
right?
It can be immensely joyful, but also immensely sad.
And nostalgia takes many forms.
Yeah.
I find in my life as well. Like there's a certain type of nostalgia which is just it's a nice, peaceful, good memory of something that happened that was a wonderful time, but it's okay that it's been and gone. And
right.
then there's another type of nostalgia which is like an ache, which you kind of can't take your claws out of somehow. You can't. You almost wish for yourself to be back in that moment.
Right.
That is so Harold, isn't it?
I was
All
going to
of
say,
his memories are haunting. None of them are like, oh, that time when, wasn't it great? It's like that time when, the time when that I can't stop thinking about that's actually unraveling my mental state.
Right.
There's one really good example of that though in the play, which is there's this one memory that is discussed on 3 different occasions, which is the memory of Jerry throwing Emma up in not Emma, Charlotte. Sorry, can I?
Jerry was working out back then.
Can I tell you why I said that? I tell you why I said that.
Realize they were.
One of the 2 lovely girls who played Charlotte in the play
is named Emma?
called Emma. That's why I said that. And so when she's about to walk in, I see her in the wings, and I often say, "Oh, there's Emma." Anyway, the memory is discussed on 3 different occasions. Twice in scene 1, and once in scene.
I'm going to quiz you on
6.
this.
Once in scene 6.
6.
Yes, and then in our production we see it. Yeah, once in scene 6. That's right. And it's fascinating to me that how Jerry feels about that memory is influenced by what he currently knows. So when he first remembers it, it's a nice memory. But in that moment, he doesn't yet know that Robert knows about the affair. So in his mind, the affair is over. They didn't get found out. That's painful for other reasons. But the memory of that moment, this something we talked about in rehearsals, this idea that Harold, a theme that is in many of Harold's plays, which is the lost Eden, a moment in time that everything was wonderful and perfect that we can never get back to, even if it's misremembered. So he remembers this moment as this lovely moment where everyone was happy and they were laughing, and it's a joyous memory. And then he discovers that Robert has just found out, even though that's not true either. He's just found out about the affair. And the first thing he goes to is that moment, that memory, which is now a horrible, haunting memory. And similarly, when he remembers it in 6, it's during the affair where he's plagued by the ghost of Robert.
I mean, so much of what you're talking about is understanding when who knows what in this play that starts at the very end and then goes back to the beginning and then goes forward. And I know that, it being in reverse chronology, but you guys spent time rehearsing it chronologically. What did that change for you? How did that inform what you ended up doing, having rehearsed it in that way?
I mean, it's a really interesting exercise because then you have, even in rehearsal, you have the memory of finding things out in the right order. And also, it's curious because there's very little if you organize the scenes in chronological order, there's very little joy, very little of people being happy or honest. Someone is always hiding something. Someone's hiding a truth that they know that they're not going to let the other person know that they know. And I think the way he's organized it.
Right
Yes, exactly. I've been saying those words a lot. But the way he organizes it is so brilliant, I think, because he gives the audience in the first 2 scenes the lay of the land. There are no spoilers after that. The audience are on the inside.
Right.
He says, right, these are our 3 characters. These 2 have been having the affair. He knows, he doesn't know. He sets up a very complex pattern of upright dominoes. And then the audience are going to watch them fall. And the interest, I think, is watching how they fall and when, and trying to track the many different betrayals.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't seen the show, there are no spoilers. That's the beauty of this.
That's the beauty. Yeah, that's very true. I think it was really useful to track the births of children for me when we did it chronologically. And the timings from marriage to first child, second child, the introduction of Jerry and Judith, his wife's children. Again, like Charlie said, to try and build what that happy moment before it all went crashing down might have been, to sort of try and establish what their joy together might have been. That was really useful.
I mean, the very end of the play, the very end of the play as you see it, Robert enters the final scene unaware of what's just happened. And he has, I think, I should have counted how many words it is. I can count it now, it's quite right, absolutely quite right. 5 words. So Robert has 5 words in the play. Oh no, and then you are actually 8 words. 8 words in the play where he doesn't know about the affair, which is a really curious thing to discover.
But arguably, he has no words.
Yes.
Because the affair isn't, there's a kiss. There's not an affair yet.
Yeah.
But that is a really...
Something to puzzle.
This is where the moral code of the actors.
Well, lest we forget, Emma has a whole slew of men waiting.
That's very true.
So I don't want to make. I'm not sure.
That's very true. Yeah, the play ends at a party, and I can tell you, there's a lot of men waiting.
Yeah.
down in the living room.
The play, I mean, so this reverse chronology is how the play is written. It's always done this way. What is not always done is what you brought up, that all three of you remain on stage throughout the entire production, and it changes the audience experience, certainly, to see, you know, the specter of someone essentially lingering in the background. I'm wondering how, if at all, it changes for you, both when you're playing and when you're listening. Like, the second time that I saw it, Tom, I noticed that you start out over Zawe's shoulder, and then you move, and you end up behind Charlie's shoulder. And I'm like, are you guys feeling that while you play?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if they are, but...
You can feel something.
Tom's like, yes, I know I walk from stage left to stage right.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a manifestation of guilt. The presence of the third object is the wronged party. And so often in the play, the scenes are two people in conversation talking about the absent character. So when it's Jerry and Emma, they're always talking about Robert. When it's Emma and Robert, they're always talking about Jerry. When it's Jerry and Robert, they're always talking about Emma. And the manifestation of the literal physical presence, like a ghost, is a manifestation of the object in the mind, which I think makes things very uncomfortable. And I think there's a energy between us that we hold together, that it is a triangulation. And what was once a couple has been triangulated, and that's just very complex, and so it makes it real. That whether it's me or Zawe or Charlie, they're listening. We're all listening in to each other all the time.
Right. How does it change things for you two on the listening end or on the playing end, so to speak?
Oh, God.
Well, the scene 6 is a really... For me, scene 6 and scene 8, I'll explain which ones they are very poignant in that regard, because scene 6 is a scene between Zawe and myself, Emma and Jerry in the flat that they rent, in the apartment that they rent, and
is this the one where they're breaking up, giving keys
no,
back?
No,
This is one where they're happy.
Well, they're never. This is actually
literally
they're never really happy.
middle.
There's never really a scene. There's moments of happiness.
This is scene 6.
This is scene 6 here. Yeah, exactly right. So, this scene, as written, only includes Emma and Jerry.
Right.
And in our production, of course, Robert is sitting in this chair. And there's a bit towards the end where I have the memory of the child, throwing the child up, and the memory is, and in rehearsals that felt very, there was a sense of why am I having such trouble with this memory? But it was almost like Jerry hadn't worked through those feelings quite yet, and it was almost just like an observation that I'm still. Well, I can't get rid of this memory. It's frustrating. But in the way that we stage it, and Robert, Tom, walks over and looks at me before I deliver that. And that has changed the nature of that moment so significantly, because it really feels like he's being haunted by a ghost, and that he's haunted by the memory of it. And so the gravitas of that, I think, is much heavier than it would be were we not to be staging it the way we are.
I also noticed that, and I don't know if this is me really reading into things, but in the beginning of the play, whoever is in the background is generally standing, and as the play continues, in Tortello, you're on the floor, in Lunch, you're on the floor. Was that intentional? Is that a way of just us like almost like a camera, like focusing?
Maybe it was us getting more and more tired in rehearsal. I just thought about that. I was like, I think there was a point where I had the apple that I'm supposed to eat, and I thought, I'm not going to stand this time, actually. I've spent a lot of time standing. I'm just going to sit on the floor over here. But I think that's a brilliant way to read into it, because I think there are there are very deep instincts that we all utilized as actors when we were having to find those moments. And I think the fact that maybe we get closer to the ground or something feels a bit more kind of stripped back, a little bit more fatigued maybe.
They certainly become more involved in the action as the play goes on.
Yeah.
They're more, as you said at the beginning, they're just kind of there in the background, almost like a shadow.
Yeah.
And by the end, you know, we're looking at each other.
Yeah.
Right.
More claustrophobic is the key, I think.
Yeah, I think that's
This sort of
really
claustrophobic anxiety that's created.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also, just in terms of the focus, you all have done your fair share of camera work. How, if at all, has that made you better on stage?
For this play, it's helped, I think, enormously, because we even talked about moments in this play that were like close-ups in a film. We have had to really stay true to the vision that Jamie had very, very early on, which was that this was to be truly contained as a piece of acting work. You know, Pinter's words are obviously naturally lend themselves to being contained, being generally British and suppressed, but there was also something that Jamie needed us to do on this completely bare stage, that was to be confident enough to be still, to be extremely economical with movement, to feel as deeply as possible, so that any emotion need not be presented, that it could just kind of radiate the way that it does in a close-up.
I find that a thrilling challenge as an actor, really, sincerely, is to, because the play, I think, contains enormous pain. I think all three characters are in incredible pain, and their lives are not turning out how they expected. And there's a huge sense of loss. But these are not melodramatic people. And the internal chaos is not externalized in, you know, nobody's throwing furniture, or, you know, nobody's screaming or shouting or
And
yelling.
yet, I really feel like I can see the silent lines in your faces. There's so much, yes, suppressed, but absolutely telegraphed to the audience. And I'm wondering, like, do you have a consistent script for yourself in your head?
A bit, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I find that, like, you wrote your,
What do you mean?
like, in those, like, in the silences,
Yeah.
have you written something Robert or Jerry or Emma is thinking in that silence?
Yes.
That's the same every night for you?
Not the same every night, but yeah, you do fill it with head chatter.
Yeah.
Charlie,
Go on.
Well, Charlie quoted a lovely line from Harold Pinter's about the pauses and the silences. He writes them in, and all he ever asked of a company of actors was that that actors honoured the words he wrote down, and he gives very little in stage directions, virtually none. But you have to say the characters must say what he wrote, and you must honour the pauses and the silences. And there are fewer silences than pauses, but there are some. And the difference between a pause and a silence is, a pause is when one character expects the other to speak or has decided not to say what they were going to say. A silence is a moment, a period of time after which both characters are irreversibly changed. And so exploring Jamie's challenge to us was to allow the silences to stand, to hold in tension. And as an actor, initially it's difficult because you don't want the play to slow down. You don't want the energy to somehow sag. You want to keep the energy.
Well, that's what's so phenomenal about it, is that in every single one of those, be it a pause or a silence, I'm not sitting there going, tick-tock.
We hope not.
No, it's really, I mean, but that's because of the energy and the focus, and I like I said, I see what's going on in each of your heads. You know, I see him going like, am I going to tell him? I'm not going to tell him that I know. Okay, I'm not. You know, like it's all going on there.
There are three people who are terrified of intimacy, real intimacy, and one of the most exciting things about the pauses and the silences for me is all the things you could say to make it better in that moment, all the things you could say in that awful, painful silence that would remedy the situation. I'm not happy in this marriage. I'm not sure we're going to make it, you know. I just wish you would leave Judith because actually I'm in huge amounts of pain every time you don't make it to one of our meetings. I'm worried what will happen for the children. I deeply love you and I'm afraid of the future. There are so many things they could say, and instead it's, you know, when are we going to play squash?
Yeah.
Long pause. So they do change every single night, and I wonder what it would look like if you suddenly wrote all of the things
all
that
of
you
the
could
silent
say.
dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of how things change night to night, I cannot leave this stage without talking about the Tortelli scene, because I want to watch that scene 15 times.
Masochist.
I do.
Rewind.
And this, I mean,
Oh, it's so sad.
But so like the first time I saw the play, you were sobbing and snotting, and you're like searching for her eyes.
Yeah.
And the second time I saw the show, you were angry, and it was like jaw clenched, and you couldn't even look at her.
Interesting.
And those are such two very different interpretations of the reaction the same man can have to the same woman, and how you handle his reaction in those pauses. Like, what changes it for you night to night? Do you even know?
I think it's something to do with the momentum of the piece itself, and that's the thrill of doing a play, is that every successive moment you carry into the next scene, and some nights certain aspects resonate more deeply than others. There's an extraordinary silence, there's an extraordinary couplet before silence at the end of scene 5, the Tortelli scene. After Emma's confession, we're lovers, she says a few lines later, I'm sorry. And Robert says, sorry, ? Silence. And the nature of the apology is sometimes different. And the nature of the way Robert receives the apology is sometimes different, which is sometimes I feel that Emma is absolutely soul shattered that she has done this. And sometimes I feel that sorry is the only thing she can think of saying, because there are no words really to put to this level of pain. And one night I might be feeling the loss of the friendship more deeply. Another night I might be feeling a kind of fury about the paternity question over who is Ned's father. Because he says, you know, how long has this been going on? Some time, but how long exactly? 5 years. And
he does the math, and we watch him do the math.
And then so 5 years, and then that's soul-crushing, devastating, truly devastating, that he's been humiliated in this way, that 5 years have gone by, his wife's been having an affair with his best friend under his nose. And I can feel the pain of that, the loss of it, the shame of it. I feel like a fool. Or the fact that Ned is 1 year old, the next question, unspoken, is, well, who's his father? And that can, sometimes the terror that I might not be the father of my own son is something that comes alive in that moment. So it's a really interesting...
Well, and then what happens in that scene, I feel like, totally comes out in the lunch scene. You know, that how angry you are in the lunch scene as well, and then, you know, what you're walking into in that scene. And as much pain as there is in this show, there is a lot of humor. I mean,
there is, yes. And I think he means that, important to say. I think Pinter knows that on some level, these circumstances are absurd, that life is absurd, that pain is absurd in some way, and that there's with the enormous sensitivity we have as human beings to feel, sometimes with time or with a different perspective, these things can be very funny. You know, life's a dream, and he means for there to be humor in it.
There's a friend of mine made an observation which I'm obsessed with ever since he he made it, which is that in the second scene when Jerry has just found out that Robert knows about the affair.
I love that scene.
Jerry is very perplexed and hurt and disappointed that he's not getting the reaction that he expected from his quote-unquote best friend.
Right. That
he
he's
had
not
an affair with
betrayed
his
enough.
wife. That he seems to be completely unworried about it.
Indifferent.
And indifferent. And that's very painful to Jerry. He gets very upset about that. The observation my friend made was that it's so ironic that he gets the reaction that he wanted, but he gets it in a restaurant 4 years earlier without knowing he's getting it.
He gets it with a piece
Right.
of melon attached to the fork.
Yes.
Yeah. But for me, that's a really great
So smart.
element of genius from Harold's point of view. That's so clever.
It's so absurd.
It's so absurd.
It's so absurd that for the situation, Robert's best friend has been having an affair with his wife, and rather than confront his best friend, he confronts the waiter
Yes.
for not bringing the
Shout out
lunch
to
fast
Eddie Arnold.
enough. Shout out to Eddie Arnold. And the poor waiter gets this extraordinary ferocity out of nowhere.
He confronts the melon.
He confronts the man.
I mean,
does.
let all the waiters of New York know it may not be you. They just may have found out that his best friend's having an affair with his wife. We have a couple of audience questions. Can you talk about the use of the turntables, please? Props to whoever asked that one.
Great question.
Great question.
Very much an idea that came from Jamie Lloyd, our director, understanding that this is a play about the nature, the passing of time and memory, and that time is going backwards very obviously because of the reverse chronology, but memory distorts the process of time, and that in some regard these three characters are in orbit around each other. There's almost a gravitational force or a pull between them. And it was a very simple, I think it began as a very simple idea, very simple, that Jamie is very aware of the nature of subtext in Pinter's plays, and that what people say is often not what they mean.
Right.
So there's the words that come out of their mouths, but underneath it there's a different meaning, and the ground is never secure. The ground is always shifting beneath their feet.
I almost saw it too as cogs in a clock, like the actual cogs that one won't move without the other, because I think, Zawe, you and I spoke about, the codependence of the relationships and the betrayals.
Absolutely, 100%.
And that you can't, you were saying that once the affair ends, so does the marriage, because they're all actually holding each other.
And the friendship.
And the friendship.
It's also like a clock. It's a rewinding of time in a very useful way sometimes. The use of the inner and outer rim was a very important thing at the beginning of rehearsals. We had to imbue it with meaning, because you can't. There's an inner circle that moves, and then there's an outer rim that moves, and sometimes they're going at the same time, and sometimes they're going the opposite ways. And you had to be very careful how you used both. It couldn't be generalized. So even though you see us sort of sometimes easily stepping from one realm to another, that it took a lot of time to really balance it and make it emotional rather than logistical.
Are there things that play differently here than in London? And I don't just mean an understanding of Kilburn or Squat. Like, are there emotional things that are landing? People are laughing at something they didn't laugh at in London. At least that's how I'm going to interpret the question.
Yeah, there's a few. I think there's a few. There's a moment in scene. I always find this interesting. There's a moment in scene. It probably doesn't mean anything, but there's a moment in scene 5, which is the Venice scene. It's funny that everyone calls it, by the way, the Tortelli scene, because it takes place in Venice.
Right.
They just talk about Tortelli, but it is the Venice scene.
Oh yeah, we never make it.
They never make it.
Well, Robert
he
makes
does.
it.
Oh yeah, you go.
With a well-thumbed copy of W.B. Yeats.
there's a moment where Robert, when he's just found out that they have an apartment or a flat, he asks, "Is the flat nice?" He says, "Nice." And in London, people found that very funny, and here, it's not funny at all.
No.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the reason for that is. It's interesting.
I feel like I actually get laughs in New York as opposed to London, which was
By the way,
sometimes deafeningly silent.
There was something happened on the matinee that I wanted to talk to you about. There was like something landed. Oh yes, something landed in the matinee today, which was a few people really laughed at you having lunch with your sister.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
But that never really landed. It landed today, didn't it?
There are surprise laughs, I would say. More in.
I was like, "Hey!"
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, she's been grinding it out for 200 performances.
Honestly,
and last
I really
this morning it got a laugh.
I need like a little star chart with some of my.
Well, in that vein,
Mind
Jessica wants to know what was the funniest unexpected thing that happened on stage? Perhaps.
Melon. I mean, the melon is...
Melon's gone everywhere.
It can be so tricky. There's a couple of things that have happened with the melon. There was one instance where I stabbed a piece of melon with my fork, and we were talking about Spinks, this book that Jerry has given Emma, and Robert refused to publish. And the line is, "Do you think that makes me a publisher of unique critical judgment or a foolish publisher?" And I flicked the fork in sort of some flourish, and the piece of melon went in a perfect mathematical arc into my wine glass. And I thought, how am I going to get out of this one? I can't remember. I think I got Eddie back on and said, "New glass." There was one other night.
It went in the audience.
The one went in the audience, yeah. Front row, apologies. And then it was very funny, where a piece of melon went onto the floor, and I wasn't thinking, because I was so caught up in Robert's diatribe about the awfulness of modern prose literature, that I'm knowing I have to finish this melon by the time I get to the end of the speech, and I pushed my chair back and picked this piece of melon off the floor and put it in my mouth. And the audience did exactly that and thought this was deeply unsavory.
5-second rule.
5-second rule.
5-second
yeah.
rule.
I then looked up into my esteemed colleague's eyes, which were very twinkly. And both of us had to take a pause before continuing, because we thought we might lose contact with the play.
Well, there was the day when we came back from. I published a book whilst we were doing Betrayal, just because I'm quite casual like that.
She wrote a play.
No.
Yes.
Thank you. That's very, very
These
kind.
two slackers
Very
over here
kind.
just
Yes.
just showing up.
Trying to show them up. But the day we came back, we did a performance the day of my book launch. So these guys very kindly came to support me at my book launch in the morning, and then in the evening performance, there's a line which is about Casey, this other writer in the fabric of the play, publishing a book, and your line is.
I say, I don't even.
Going over to New York.
I'm going over to New York.
Someone wants to film that novel of his you didn't like. That's my line. Someone wants to film that novel of his you didn't like. But that week before, we'd been to Zawe's book launch.
No, that day.
That day, and I went. Someone wants to film that book of yours he didn't like.
Freudian slip.
Yeah.
We didn't discuss this actually, and we should have, because you can do the clearing up of why is Emma barefoot throughout the play, which is one of my favorite explanations that no, it's not about anything about being tall.
No, people ask me if
People
I'm
don't
barefoot
make
because
costume decisions because they're afraid of women being too taller than men, okay?
So yeah, it's not about height. The two men with very decent height anyway, and have a lot of good self-esteem, so it's not about that. It was something that I rehearsed barefoot from day one, really. And again, it was partly because we were faced with this completely bare stage. And there's something about being barefoot that kind of creates an instant domesticity in a way. You know, there are scenes inside and in the afternoon and, you know, post-coital, pre-coital that you're kind of trying to create from nothing, literally nothing. So it just felt like the right thing, and it also
I mean, you
felt
and I also
more
discussed that
vulnerable.
she's just a woman who wants to experience everything.
Yes.
And that like connection, I think I
Connection to
described
the
it
ground.
as the Pretty Woman moment of walking barefoot in the grass, that she just
100%.
wants to feel everything.
Me, Julia Roberts, absolutely
Yeah.
right. I mean, we just
Yeah.
commune with each other
We
in
do.
that
That's
way.
Richard Gere who does that, though, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's
Julia
Richard
Roberts.
Gere who does
Well, yes, she says to him, like, haven't
Oh,
you
and then
ever
he
done it?
does
And
it.
then he does it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm not comparing myself to Richard Gere.
Before we go, I
Wait,
have...
sorry, just on that.
Yeah.
I just really quickly say, so Zawe comes down, before she walks on stage, she comes down in some very, very fluffy pink slippers. And the other day, she forgot to take them off. And she walks on, we walk on the same order every night, Tom, then Zawe, then me. So I walked on and I saw that she was wearing the slippers still. And I was like, I should probably say something, but I kind of want to see what happens if I don't. Anyway, luckily or unfortunately, it was discovered just beforehand. I'd love to see the play with her wearing those slippers.
I mean, it recontextualizes everything, really.
Very much so.
Okay, 2 quick questions before we wrap, and this one lightning. You all have played so many roles, screen and stage. Is there one past role that comes up for you most in building this character that you think back on, like, oh, I'm so glad I played whomever?
What a great question.
Really good question. Shall I?
Yes,
So
please.
it's potentially quite boring. I actually played Anna in Old Times, Pinter's Old Times, when I was 19.
I remember the story.
And I worked so hard. You can imagine being 19 and being faced with Pinter's work. It's a lot. You're either like, I have no idea what's going on and I don't want to know what's going on and I'm just going to skip this semester of school. But there was just like an instant click, I think, for me. There was something that I identified with instantly, even though as a woman in her 40s, again, trapped in this web of nostalgia and violence with 2 other people. It's one of Pinter's other memory plays, and it's a 3-hander as well. And I remember just throwing everything I had at it and loving it so much and knowing I was good. You know when you just know you're good? Maybe you always think that when you're 19. You're like, I am nailing this. But I felt it. I felt it so deeply. It had a huge effect on me and really helped me grow as an actor at that point. And I got a bad grade. And the teacher said, if I'd known it was going to be that easy for you, I would have given you a different role. And I remember thinking, easy? Are you insane? This has been one of the, deepest reaches of my young, exploration of this craft, and so I'm very thankful I did that.
What about for you, Charlie?
Well,
go to you next.
In Theory of Everything, when I read that script, I remember thinking the great challenge with that role was that I met the gentleman I was playing, Jonathan Haley-Jones. I met him. And I remember thinking, what's really challenging about that role is I believe he was a good man. I believe that he was someone who was scrupulous in the way that he conducted himself. And yet he still does, fall in love and have an affair with another man's wife. And I remember thinking the challenge for me in that role was it's important that he's likable. I think that was the truth of both the script but also the person that I met. But also you do have to, you have to engage in the betrayal and the infidelity of that. Similarly with Jerry,
Right.
the great challenge for this play is I do think that this play works when, as an audience member, you don't vilify anyone. so that you meet these three people, or at least you don't, by the end of it, you don't vilify anyone. Your allegiance almost shifts and changes throughout the play as you discover more information and as these characters reveal themselves to you. So that I think you should like all three of them, and you should also dislike all three of them in a certain capacity.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that although Jerry instigates the affair and does what he does, which is he has a 7-year relationship with his best friend's wife. I do also think that he should be he shouldn't be the baddie in this piece. You should also like him. So any directors out there looking for someone who can be nice while they betray their best friend, I'm your man. I'm your go-to.
Here you go.
Typecast me.
I roll that.
It's hard to think of. Can I sort of split it and have
Yeah.
two? I think one of them is, I suppose, a kind of technical thing, which is about silence and trying to explore a character's internal world without words, which I think has helped explore these long silences. And I think the sort of, I felt that when I was making The Night Manager and playing Jonathan Pine, who says very little. Thank you very much. He doesn't say anything. He says very little. He's very economical with what he says, but what he feels is very deep and very varied. But as the others were talking, I was also remembering a character I played 11 years ago, in a film called Archipelago, which is directed by Joanna Hogg, and his pain is very repressed, and the complexity of his feelings is locked away, and there's some sort of, I think his character, his name is Edward, and I think there's something of Edward in Robert, perhaps, in the sort of the privacy of that vulnerability, the containment of it.
You really have to answer this one fast.
Okay.
If you were to do this play again, gender bending, gay version, whatever, if you could keep your role or switch to another role, do you keep it or switch? And if you were to switch, who do you switch to?
I play Emma.
You'd play Emma? Love it.
Can I just say at this
With pink
point,
slippers.
keeping it very quick, that we actually have done this before.
Ah!
Having lunch one day when we were halfway through the run in London, and we just sort of jokingly said, I wonder if we know each other's lines, like how well have we been listening? And we started to do it and actually got nearly through the whole play. And what I will say is you were a lovely Emma. And so I think you've made the right choice. You were lovely, actually, really moving. I was a wonderful Robert, so I'd go with Robert.
You'd be a great Robert.
I was good, yeah. Menacing,
Not
sexy.
19 and still knows she's good.
I guess I've got to be Jerry.
No, you don't.
You need one of each. And because you need to go to the theater, my last question is, because writing, acting, screen, theater, I know that it's not really the medium, it's the story. What kind of story are you most attracted to coming forward?
I love a really good love story. I love a good love story, but it's got to be really good. It can't be. Do you know what I mean? I'm not a sucker for any sort of rom-com. It has to be really. I don't know.
Romance, not rom-com.
Yeah. Yes. When against the odds, it's often not even just love stories. It's often like scenes in movies where, like it's such a random example, but like one of my favorite moments in cinema history, and this is probably going to sound lame, but is when Keanu Reeves pulls up Trinity in The Matrix in the first one, and she realizes what she's always known, or whatever. I can't remember. It's brilliant.
What about you, Zawe?
I think I'm the same. And why I love doing Betrayal, it's because it is a sort of an anti-romance, if that's a genre. Things like The Lobster, for example, is a film that I really love. Anything that sort of explores the minutiae and the pain and the more difficult aspects of
I'm the masochist.
of love. Yeah, I know. I'm a masochist. I've been done Betrayal for 230 times.
What about you, Tom?
I think it's something about finding something meaningful in the experience of being alive, which is that it doesn't matter what the story is, that there is a kind of the specific is also the universal. So if you tell a story about a specific human being with that specific human being's struggles and optimism and hope and fear and pain and suffering and complexity, you actually express something universal that we can all relate to. And that's the whole point of what we do. That's the whole point of theatre and cinema and literature is to connect us together, to find our common humanity, the things we share, as opposed to the things that divide us.
I absolutely agree. And on that note, you guys have an evening performance, so we have to let you go. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for being here. Don't forget, if you haven't seen it or you want to go again, you can see Betrayal on Broadway at the Bernard Jacobs Theater through December 8th. You can follow Betrayal on social, Instagram and Twitter at BetrayalBWY. And you can follow me on Instagram at Ruthie Fierberg. We'll see you at the theater. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.